Welcome back to the Deeply Rested podcast. This is the final episode of 2024. And to celebrate the end of the year, I wanted to do something totally different today on the podcast. I want to pull back the curtains to show you exactly what's been happening behind the scenes for me and my team inside of this business this year. It has been a transformative year for us that has really centered around learning how to embody more anti-capitalist values in our business. And we've just learned so much along this journey that it feels really important to share openly and honestly with all of you about what's been happening, what that journey has been like, and what you might be able to glean from the process that we've been going through this year. So for the final episode of this season, I've invited my business manager, Nancy Guidry, to join me on the podcast to have a year-end review conversation all about our anti-capitalist journey this year. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What's been hard, what's been liberating, what we've learned, and where we're going next with this work. At the end of the conversation, we share some reflection questions with you to help you enter into your own year-end review process, and also to help you integrate the things that you hear us share into your own business without feeling like you have to compare yourself to us or copy or replicate the really bizarre journey that we've been on this year. That's not our intention at all. We want to share openly and honestly, and we trust that there will be little nuggets, little seeds of this conversation that resonate deeply with you personally and professionally. And we're going to give you some reflection questions at the end of the interview to help you integrate those ahas, those nuggets into your own introspective process. So I'm so thrilled. I'm so excited to share this with you, to pull back the curtain, to welcome you into the fold of the Deeply Rested community. And I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what you think, what you experience after listening to this conversation. Thank you so much. We launched this podcast a few months ago in September, and it's just been such a joy, such an honor, and we can't wait to share so much more with you in 2025. Okay, without further ado, enjoy this behind-the-scenes look into the Deeply Rested universe. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Maegan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now it's time for the show. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Megan.
Welcome to the Deeply Rested podcast.
Oh, thank you so much.
You've never been here before.
I know. Well, I've seen the behind the scenes, but I've never actually been here.
I mean, you have listened to more hours of podcast footage than any other person on the face of the planet. You're our number one fan.
So true. So true. Yeah.
I'm really excited. For this. We're going to dive in and we're going to talk about this business and what's been happening this past year and where we're headed. And it's going to be kind of wild, I guess, because this is a weird thing to do. But Nancy and we're feeling into it together. Let's just get started. Yeah?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So Nancy's going to introduce herself a little bit more in a couple of minutes, but we thought we would start first by just really clarifying what are we doing right now with this particular episode and why are we doing it? So let's just orient ourselves and all of the listeners to what the purpose of this conversation is. And then after that, we'll move into introductions. Nancy, talk to me about why we're doing this right now?
Yeah. Well, we figured that we wanted to give our listeners a behind the scenes view of the business operations by reviewing our year, the year that we've just had, and
Yeah.
kind of sharing our intentions moving forward as we go into next year.
Yes. Yes, that is, in fact, what we're doing. And Nancy and I talked a lot about doing this, having this conversation, like doing a year-end review conversation. But then as we were getting into it and sort of planning it out, we realized we needed to clarify our why. Why are we doing this? Why does this feel like an important conversation to have? Otherwise, it feels a little bit egotistical, like narcissistic, like, hey guys, just doesn't everyone want to listen to an hour-long conversation of what's happening in my business? I know neither one of us are interested in having like a performative conversation.
Yeah.
So things really started to get a little bit deeper when we began exploring the why. Why do we want to have this conversation? What purpose do we want this to serve? And where we've landed on the why is that this year, we're going to talk a ton about this today, we've been actively re-envisioning this business through an anti-capitalist lens, which is a really wild thing to do. And there's no roadmap, right? It's like totally the wild, wild west, trying to figure out what does it mean to operate a profitable business outside of the traditional rules and paradigms of capitalism. And we really want to show listeners, our audience, all business owners, like we want to show people what that process has been like, right? We want to open the doors and to say, hey, like here's for real what's been happening behind the scenes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's really important to us because two of our primary values in this company are transparency and symbiosis. And what we mean by that is transparency. We think that part of the scam of capitalism, if you will, part of the way the scam operates is by telling us that everything is secret, right? So if we just zoom out for a second, capitalism is basically the economic system that functions on privatization and competition, right? So everything is privately owned. It's the belief that like all individuals are separate from each other and we're all competing against each other to extract and collect as many resources as possible for our own personal use. Right? This is like the system of capitalism. And when we're operating inside of these really competitive, exploitative paradigms, we believe that we have to hide what's happening behind the scenes because we don't want to reveal our trade secrets.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want like people copying what we're doing. We don't want people seeing our weaknesses because if people see our weaknesses, then they're going to know where to attack. So, and it's like, we're all doing this. Even if you don't think you're doing this, this is deeply internalized. If you grew up in this culture, you're doing this because this is the way we're taught to exist in the world. So what that's led to, and my observations, is a whole lot of people who are talking about business, but not actually showing you behind the scenes, like what's happening and how it's going and where it's challenging. So we like exist in this business, this small business world now where we have to like pay each other for information. And the information that we're paying for, it's only like the information that's been like packaged and tied up with a bow, right? Okay, I found this one thing that works in my business. So now I'm going to package up this one thing and I'm going to charge other people to know what it is. And maybe it will help them, but they're going to receive it with no context.
Yeah. They're not going to see all of the nitty gritty that went into it, the flaws, the questioning, the mistakes, the circling back. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's like we're all paying for little bits and pieces of information that don't illustrate the full picture. And then we're trying to piece that into the context of our business where we're also not giving people the full picture and the full context about what's happening. I mean, it's just a mess. It feels chaotic. It feels superficial that we're all only showing each other like what's happening that feels like presentable, what's happening above the surface. So we believe, Nancy and I believe, that one of the many ways we can decondition from these capitalistic paradigms is to get more honest with each other about the full context. And that really feeds into our value around symbiosis. When we say we value symbiosis, what we mean is that we want everything we do to have a positive impact for everyone, including ourselves, right? We want to have this conversation is really helpful for Nancy and I as we're reflecting on the year and planning for next year. We want this conversation to be really helpful for everyone who listens to it. We want this conversation to have a trickle-down positive effect for the clients of the business owners who are listening to this conversation. So in a large nutshell, that's why we're doing this. We want to increase transparency. We want to live our value of symbiosis. And we want to practice what we preach in terms of saying, let's show each other everything without hiding the good stuff behind a paywall and hiding the scary stuff or the bad stuff in a closet where no one can see it ever.
Yeah.
Is that making sense, Nancy? Anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just like I've always really held shared resources as a high value for myself. I've just always really believed in like sharing the resources that you've got. And so I think that also like plays into that value of symbiosis and just giving what we can and knowing that we're going to get it back in some form or another too. So yeah, it all comes right back around. So
I love that. Shared resources. That needs to be one of our values.
Yeah.
That's actually not on our list right now. I don't think we're actively revisioning our values. Yeah, it needs to be on the list. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of those moments in this conversation. We're being like, oh, let's write that down. That's good. Okay, before we get into reviewing this year, I would love to give folks a breakdown of everyone who participates in the deeply rested vision behind the scenes. Obviously, people are familiar with me since I'm the forward-facing person, but there are a whole team of people who aren't forward-facing who are so crucial. One of the things that we're really trying to do in re-envisioning this business through an anti-capitalist lens is explore ways in which we can remove hierarchy, really kind of moving away from the org chart, the pyramid of power and control, and really finding a way to create a small company that is a circle and not a pyramid, and that every person in that circle is fully committed to the mission and the vision and has full agency and autonomy to operate through their gifts. To that end, no one really has a title right now. There's like some loose titles, but like we're kind of trying to move away from titles. And we're also actively exploring how we can integrate human design into the way we organize this company. So we'll talk a little bit about that. That's the context for where we're at in this moment. And I would love for you, Nancy, to introduce yourself to the people, please.
Sure. So my name's Nancy Guidry. I use she, her pronouns. In human design, so if you listen to our last episode that came out with Jessica Rose, you might have heard a little bit about human design and the different types of human design that there are. So I'm a generator, meaning that one of my gifts is like responding to what the universe brings to my door. And so in the context of this business, I function as, I guess I'll call it an integrator if we use the visionary integrator model. So basically, what my gifts are is taking ideas and putting those into application and like making them come to life. And so in this business, I do a lot of the project planning and project management. I help Maegan, who is our visionary, take the big ideas that are kind of floating around and say like, okay, how can we make this come to life in terms of an offering, or what's the structure behind it that allows this to run, and creating like simple systems that allow the business to function more smoothly without overcomplicating things. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I have a background that's kind of all over the place. I did a lot of work in the arts previous to doing this work. And then I was a public school teacher for several years. And that job was like really so out of alignment for me personally. And I burned out really, really quickly. It was pretty bad. And so I resigned from that and started working here with Maegan in 2020. And we've been here ever since. And I think one of the things that I really appreciated kind of coming into this work was having experienced such a huge the depth of the burnout that I felt as a teacher, and coming into this work that was about like building in rest and honoring ourselves as a human. And just, it really spoke to me. And I've been really excited to see all of the things that we're doing and how they've grown and evolved over time. And I'm just really thrilled for what's in store for the future too.
Wow. That was an amazing introduction. I loved it. We just got like your whole life story, and the way you just told that story was such a beautiful example of like connecting the dots. And when we start like connecting the dots through our whole history and being really curious about like, how have all of these points on my journey led me to this spot, like where I am right now, and then holding that really loosely too, right? Like you were saying, like, well, we're still figuring out where we're headed. Oh, I'm excited to see where we're going next. I feel like a big part of what we're discovering about moving away from a mainstream method of creating a business is we want to erase the line between the personal and the professional. Because it's really easy to compartmentalize like who you are as a person versus like who you are at work, and to keep those two parts of your life totally separate. And we've discovered over the last 4 years of working with clients in this way that the more people compartmentalize the professional from the personal, the more likely they are to end up in burnout. And it makes so much sense, right? Because when you're compartmentalizing, you are denying yourself a full 50% of your lived experience in the world of who you are. We really want to help people find a way to weave together their whole life story, every part of their identity, of their personality, of their gifts, like weaving all of that into the mission and the fabric of the work that we do in the world, the work we do to be of service, the work that we do to make money. And something we've really been doing this year is asking ourselves questions of like, how can everybody in this company do that? Not just me, Maegan. Like that doesn't feel right. That feels hierarchical, right? If it's like, oh, okay, Maegan gets to live her best life, and like she gets to figure out how to take time off and like weave the personal into the professional, but then everyone else underneath her just has to do a 9-to-5 job. That feels wrong. Every part of my body is like, no. Everybody needs to have space to create a more integrated personal and professional in service of the mission of this particular business. Okay, it felt like a good time to share that context.
Yeah.
Thank you for introducing yourself, and we would not be where we are right now without all of your contributions and gifts. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Grateful for it.
Man. Cool shit is happening. We'll have to save it for another conversation, like the very synchronistic way in which we found each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that for a different interview. Okay, so there's Nancy, who is our generator, our integrator. Through a more traditional lens, we can think of you as being the person who like manages the operations.
Yeah.
Like operations coordinator, I don't know, whatever. Then there's me. I'm, from a human design perspective, the projector in our company. So my natural gifts are to guide, to lead, to see the situation at hand, and to know how to choreograph the energy of the team, of the group of clients, of an individual client. I feel like I am really rooted in my gifts when I am doing my personal work, and when I'm thinking and talking about these ideas, and when I'm guiding other people and moving through this process for themselves. So that's me. That's what I am doing in this company. And then we have Jonathan, who also happens to be my spouse. And Jonathan is in human design a manifester. And manifestors in human design are people who basically receive ideas. They receive clarity. And Jonathan is like a very quiet manifester. I think of him as like my back pocket manifester, because like I walk around our house and I'm just like a flurry of like ideas and thoughts and desires and opinions. I have so many opinions. If you're listening to this, you know that at this point. So I'm just like, yeah, right? What? So I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. And then every now and then Jonathan will be like, that third thing you just said, that's the thing you need to do. And I'll be like, oh, why? And I'll say, because of X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, okay, thank you. I think like that's how the dynamic is working, right? Where he's like up on the mountaintop and he has the 30,000 foot view of what is happening. And he can just sort of distill, like point his finger at like, focus on that, like say that, do that. And it's such a gift. It's such a gift. He also manages all the money for our company. Jonathan used to be an engineer, so he's very spreadsheet savvy. So he manages all of the finances is his like tasky part of the work that we do together. So the three of us are the core team, right? There's me as the projector, Nancy as the generator, Jonathan as the manifester. And then we have a small team of contractors who help us with different tasks. So we have Ashley Dixon Ellison, who is our podcast producer.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Ashley. She's the one who edits these episodes and puts all the show notes together and was so instrumental in helping us launch this podcast. We wouldn't be doing this right now if it weren't for the support that we're getting from Ashley. So Ashley, Thank you so much. I connected with Ashley through my dear friend Lindsay Bonham, who many listeners will know. Ashley is also Lindsay's podcast producer. So we're going to link to Ashley's website in the show notes if you're curious to check her out. We also are supported by Amanda Jarks, who is our tech VA. And Amanda has been doing tech VA stuff for me for like 8 years.
Yeah, long before I was around.
Yeah. She's phenomenal. She's the person who, like, when something's broken on the website or we can't figure out how to get one software to talk to another software, we just like send Amanda an email, be like, can you fix this for us? And she's like, yep, got it, on it. She's incredible. I'm so grateful because I know neither Nancy or I are super tech savvy. So that's super helpful. We'll link to Amanda. If you're looking for a VA, like, check her out. She's phenomenal. And then we have a website team, Upswept Creative, and they do our website maintenance and they're helping us like create new website pages and whatnot. And right now, that's who we are. That's our team. Just to give all of the listeners, like, just so you know how many people are actually behind the scenes, this is how many people are behind the scenes. Next year, we are really wanting to call in another team member who focuses and specializes in marketing. It's not my natural gift. It's not Nancy's natural gift. Jonathan could live the rest of his life without talking to another human being, and he would be the happiest man on the planet. Definitely not his gift. We need someone who has that gift. We need someone who like eats, sleeps, and breathes online marketing. How do we grow our podcast audience? You know, how do we grow our email newsletter list, helping us organize launches and do a better job selling when we need to sell things? And we are calling this person in. So today's the first day we've actually said this publicly, which feels really good. If you're listening and you're like, I am that person or I know that person, definitely reach out to us because we're feeling ready. We're feeling ready to take everything we've created and just level up, which we're going to talk about today. Okay, so that's who is behind the scenes of this company. Anything you want to add to that before we get into our review?
No, I think that just about covers it all. Yeah. We have a lot of awesome people that we get to work with. So.
Definitely. And we're not even mentioning in this conversation all of the people who support us strategically, right? Like business besties and coaches that we'll do calls with when we're struggling with particular problems. Like this, you can't do this work alone. And yeah, I'm really happy with the team that we've cultivated.
Should we start with last year, you think?
I do think so. Yeah, so this conversation is a 2024 review, but upon reflection, Nancy and I decided that it would actually be helpful if we went back a little bit further and talked about some of the big things that happened in this company in 2023. Because 2023 was really the year when we decided to pivot. And then this has been the year of like the pivot taking shape. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's accurate.
And then hopefully next year will be the year that like the result of the pivot like really manifests with clarity. And I'm saying all of that because I never imagined it would take that long. Like that it took a whole year to decide to pivot, and then it took a whole year to like be in the liminal space of the pivot. And it's probably going to take all of next year to like really create the new offerings that are a result of the changes that we've made. So something that we keep learning over and over again when we're stepping into more of an anti-capitalist lens is that things happen slowly. Things happen at the speed of the earth, of nature, and seasonal cycles. And that doesn't happen quickly. And that's a really beautiful thing once you settle in and like let the slowness not be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the deconditioning from toxic capitalism is a hard thing to do, and it takes a long time. And I think that you just have to give it time. That can't happen fast. It's like if you're trying to decondition from capitalism in a quick way, like that just doesn't make any sense. And it's just, it's not going to work. It's like, for me anyway, I feel like there are lots of things that I have to continually circle back to. It's like, oh, I'm over that part, but it's like, nope, it shows up again. So it's just a process that takes a long time. And I think you just have to honor that,
Yes, thank you. That's so well said. I was struggling with that, and you just said it so much better. Maybe it's worth mentioning just for people who are new to conversations about capitalism, that like one of the hallmark features of capitalism is the belief that everything is urgent, right? Everything is urgent. You've got to move fast. Again, why? Because we're in competition with everyone else. So when you're in competition, like you got to move fast or someone else is going to beat you to it. Someone else is going to get the prize before you do. So we start moving at like such a rapid pace. And I think the biggest lesson for us in trying to decondition from capitalism has been letting our bodies adjust to a new speed. And it is really hard. It's really hard. But when we settle into a slower speed, it feels really good. So I think like for me, this year has just been this pendulum swing between like really hard and like really liberating. And then it's really hard again. And then I feel really liberated again. And that could happen like 36 times in the span of 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind. 2023. 2023 was a big year for me personally. I was doing a ton of personal work. I had been doing a ton of personal work, and it was all really like coming to a head in 2023. And part of that personal work for me was a real acknowledgement that the kind of work I was doing wasn't truly in alignment with my core values or with what I was sensing my deeper purpose really was. Kind of like you said with teaching earlier, right? When we can feel it, we can feel it in our bodies when something just isn't quite clicked in to place. And I realized that the offerings that we were sharing and the work that we were doing, it was great. It was beautiful. It was fun, but it wasn't right. So I came to you. I don't know if you remember. I don't remember like the moment that we had this conversation. I'm curious if you do, but I remember I came to you and basically just kind of shared. I think we need to close down the 2 programs that we're running. So they were Next Level Therapist was kind of the first level program. And the second tier program was Spotlight, which was a mastermind business strategy small group program. All of the work we were doing was around personal branding. So helping healers and small business owners who wanted to be thought leaders and kind of create a business that allowed them to erase that line between the personal and professional so they could be fully themselves in the work that they were doing, which I still feel really passionate about that. And the work we were doing inside of those programs was really good.
Yeah.
But there were just some elements about it that weren't quite right. Do you have any memories or stories you want to share about the early days of us talking about making a change?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember details from that conversation, but I do remember my initial reaction when you were like, I think we need to close down these two programs. And my first reaction was like, oh, fuck. Like, what? Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to make money? And so I think my initial reaction was like a little bit of trepidation about it. But at the same time, I just, with that generator energy, it's like, okay, this is what the universe is bringing me, and like, we'll make it work. So it was I was very surprised when you told me that, and I was like, oh, okay. But as time went on, it was like, oh no, like, you're totally right. And I could see the ways in which it was like not 100% aligned. And
Coming back to the human design lens, it's one of the challenging things about being a projector is that often, like, I can sense things that are true before other people can sense them. And it can be really isolating and crazy making, right? Because it's like, I'm like, I think we need to close down these programs. And then everyone around you is like, what are you talking about? But I remember at the time that you and I had these amazing conversations where we were really able to balance both the trepidation and the trust.
Yeah.
And that we were really just like, okay, like, where is the trust here? Like, what feels right about this transition? But can we also talk about the trepidation and the fear and the concerns? Because we had just spent years building out these programs, building the curriculum, recording the videos, creating the sales pages, selling them, filling them. Like, we had just spent years investing and building, and they were finally found their sweet spot, right? We were finally on cruise control with these programs. And I created these programs because it's what I was told I was supposed to do. Like, I was working with coaches. I was in the funnel. I was in the online business funnel. And the lessons being taught were, create scalable, evergreen hybrid coaching programs, and then have like an upsell after that. That's like a smaller, more expensive mastermind. And like, I did the whole thing. We did the whole thing. And it was working. It works. Right. So
it was great.
Those
the
models,
programs were great. Yeah.
Yeah. The programs were great. Our clients were great. On the surface, it was all great. And it was working the way it was supposed to work. I mean, it was challenging, but it was working. The money was coming in. We had that predictability, but there was just a deeper intuitive knowing that something's not quite right. I knew that I didn't like the format of the programs, like the structure of the hybrid evergreen online coaching programs with an upsell into a mastermind. The infrastructure of that world didn't feel right to me for a lot of different reasons. And the other thing that didn't feel right to me was doing work that focused on helping people make more money.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with making money. I want to be really super clear about that. And I'm really proud of the way that we helped people increase their income. I'm really proud of it. But it's not my purpose. That was what I was sensing. And that was the rub, right? It's that I felt like we had landed on a way of teaching people the strategy of profitable businesses that was aligned with a lot of integrity and humanity. I was really proud of the way we were teaching it, but I knew intuitively, but this isn't what I'm meant to be teaching. This isn't what I'm meant to be doing. It doesn't feel right? It doesn't light me up. I can do it, and I'm proud of what we're doing, but it's not what I'm meant to be doing. And then Nancy would say, well, what? Okay, so what are we doing? And then I had to say, I don't know yet. I don't know yet, but I think that there needs to be a period where we're not really doing anything. and we can figure that out. September of 2023, we closed the programs.
Mm-hmm.
We basically stopped making money, and we entered into 2024, which has been a liminal year, right? It has been being in the void, being in this process of re-envisioning what is it we want to do? What values do we want to stand for? What do we want our mission to actually be? If we knew that the way we were doing it wasn't quite right, our task now is to attune to what is right.
Mm.
And we have to give ourselves permission to take space to figure that out.
Yeah.
And that's what this year has been all about. Do you want to say anything else about 2023 before we move into 2024?
One thing that was kind of eye-opening for me, I think, was at the end of 2023, you came to me with the decision. You were like, hey, I've decided we're all taking a sabbatical. And it was like, okay, we're not planning anything for when we come back from sabbatical. When we leave for sabbatical, we're kind of like tying some things up and leaving them. And then we don't know what's going to happen on the other side of that. And that was the first time that I've ever really experienced anything like that in terms of work or business, just like shutting things down completely without a plan for what happens afterwards. So that was really illuminating and also like a little bit of anxiety making. But then it was like once we took the time and just really leaned in and started trusting that like things will unfold.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just kind of where like some alchemy started to happen. And just taking that pause, at least for me, was really like, okay, it was like the breath of air. Like, I'm just going to like not focus on anything during this time off and see kind of what emerges naturally. And I think that was a really interesting and illuminating way to kind of start off this year of kind of being in that liminal space. So yeah, that was just something that was really like, I don't know, perspective changing for me, I think.
If we can give a little more context around that too, because it kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier about symbiosis. Well, and I guess this is actually more about equity as a company, right? That I have been taking sabbaticals for a while, since 2018. And in the past, like I would take a sabbatical and then like Nancy would still be logged on, handling things while I was away. And yeah, as we started doing more anti-capitalist work and exploration, that's one of the examples of a spot where it started to feel not quite right to me. Like, wait a minute, why am I the only one who gets to take a sabbatical? That doesn't seem equitable, you know? Like that doesn't seem, and this conversation actually started, we were, as a team, we were reading the book Saving Time, which we never finished, so we should probably circle back to that. So it was great. And then we got sidetracked. We were reading the book Saving Time by Jenny Odell, Saving Time. And there was a part in the book that led to like a really big conversation between you, me, and Jonathan about how at the start of the Industrial Revolution, there was a shift in the workforce. And instead of like pre-industrial revolution, like we're all working together to hunt the meat and farm the vegetables and, you know, make the clothes and raise the children. And there's a real egalitarian aspect of the way that we're working. And then when the Industrial Revolution shows up, all of a sudden there's this hierarchical system that's created. And at the top of a hierarchy is the thinking man. And at the bottom of the hierarchy, or was it called the working man? Do you remember?
It was the timer and the timed.
Yes, the time. Thank you. The timer and the timed.
Yeah.
And the timer is the thinking man. That's what it was, right? The timer is the person whose job it is to sit in the office and think big thoughts, you know, and to think about like the company and the growth of the company and blah, 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 and to make the vision and make the plan. And he has the stopwatch, if you will, and he's timing all of the factory workers to, you know, make as much as they could make as fast as they could possibly make it. She goes into way more detail than this, obviously. But Nancy, so courageously, I'll never forget it. We were sitting in our little office. We were talking about this chapter. And I'll never forget it. You said, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I need to share like my reflection of this chapter is that like I'm the timed and you're the timer.
Yeah.
And can we talk about that as a dynamic? That was so brave of you to call that out and to say that. And it was like, oh shit, I don't want to be, like everything in my body was like, I don't want to be the timer. That's like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to be a part of that system.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to the end of 2023, and it was my annual winter sabbatical. And then I realized, wait a minute, like, so the timer gets to take a sabbatical, but the timed still have to just keep going? It doesn't seem right. So we decided as a team to shut the whole company down, right? Like, what if instead of one person being gone and everyone else keeping the ship rolling, like, what if we just shut it down and say, we are taking a company winter sabbatical, and that every year we set intentions going into that sabbatical. So we'll talk more about the one we're about to step into. But yeah, that's right. So we took a winter sabbatical 2023, and then we came back in January, February of 2024, and with absolutely nothing on the schedule, nothing on the calendar. We didn't know anything that was about to happen. And so began our year of re-envisioning this business, right? Re-envisioning our mission, the services that we're going to offer. And we started by thinking about the system of capitalism and the ways in which the system of capitalism have conditioned us to just automatically assume that the sole purpose of our business is to make a profit. Up to that point in this business, we had really only tracked metrics around money, right? How much money are we making? Profit loss statements, blah, blah, blah. All important, of course. But that was it. Like, that was the sole focus. So we said, let's expand our purpose as a business. And we've been returning to that conversation over and over again this year. So I'll pass the mic to you, Nancy. Walk us through the kind of different areas of purpose that we're claiming now.
Yeah. So I think we're really leaning a little further into being a little more explicit about our anti-capitalist values and leaning into like those purposes, which are to be of service to our clients, to be of service to ourselves. So we make money so we can live comfortably in this society, and we pay ourselves not just with a paycheck, but in rest. And also I feel like we're cultivating this environment, like a work environment that allows us to be fully human. And I'm not, as the timed person, I am not feeling like my value is just what I produce. I can really like bring more of myself into my work in this business. And yeah, so we're being of service to our clients, we're being of service to ourselves. We are creating community, and we're doing our part to help create societal change in kind of moving away from toxic capitalist practices. And that all feels really good.
Yeah. And I think next year is going to be the year when we deepen that exploration to say, okay, we're not just measuring the success of this business based on cash in the bank, right? We're also looking at like, how are we being of service? Like this podcast, we're creating to be of service, right? And yes, it's also a marketing vehicle for our business, symbiosis. It gets to serve multiple purposes. But at the core, like we want these conversations to change people's lives. And we want everything we do to come back to service. How are we being of service? How are we helping to create social change? And equally, we need the business to be of service to every person who works inside of the business. That is so crucial. Go back to episode 1 of this podcast, Rest is Revenue. And that's where we started with this podcast. How can we change our businesses so that they are really operating in service to the business owner? But we're taking that a step further and saying yes to the business owner, but also to be in service to all of the people who work inside of the business. Yeah. And we want to create more community, and we want to create success metrics where we're really tracking all of that. We're not just looking at how profitable are we. We're also looking at how did we create community? this season? How were we of service to ourselves this season? In what ways were we of service to our clients this season? And we're going to just continue exploring different ways to track that. So let's get more practical. That's kind of the philosophical overview, if you will, of thinking about capitalism, thinking about purpose. But let's talk about what we actually did this year. How were we of service this year to ourselves, to our clients? And we're just going to run through this list just to give you context about everything that happened this year. Predominantly, when we stepped into this year, we knew that we needed space. We needed white space on the calendar to read, to think, to have conversations, to explore. And if that could have been all we did this year, that would have been awesome. But we did need to bring in some revenue this year. So we were like, let's find balance. Yes, we want spaciousness to think and explore, but we also, we need to do some revenue generating activities as well. And to be of service, of course, is so important to us. The other thing we did this year from a business planning perspective was we abandoned traditional annual planning. And we wrote a 4-part series about this summer. You can find it on the blog on the website about anti-planning. And we shifted away from conventional business planning and really immersed ourselves in seasonal planning instead, seasonal intention setting. So starting that process of weaving our business into the tapestry of the earth instead of weaving our business into the tapestry of capitalism. What happens if we align with the natural cycles 70% and only align with capitalism the necessary 30% so that we can, in fact, make the money that we need to live in this society. So that has been a huge part of what we've been exploring and experimenting with this year. And then we wanted all of our paid offerings to be experimental. So everything that we charged for this year, we really went into it with a spirit of like, what can we learn from this? What works? What doesn't work? Like really just constantly feeling into coming more and more into alignment with the purpose that felt like the strongest, the most right, if you will. Yeah. So we returned to one-on-one work with clients, which was huge. It had been quite a while since we did one-on-one work because I really got indoctrinated in the online business world. That's like, you got to stop doing one-on-one work. No, one-on-one work is beautiful and I'm so grateful for it. I did one-on-one work. Nancy did some one-on-one consulting too. That was our primary revenue generator this year, was working one-on-one with clients. We started a community, the Deeply Rested community. We started that with alumni, so clients who had been through Next Level Therapist and Spotlight in the past and wanted to continue working with us. We hosted a Deep Rest retreat in October. We started the Deeply Rested podcast in September, and we've taken a lot of time off as well. So we've taken planned time off, responsive time off. Can you say a little bit? You have some really great thoughts about the way we took time off this year, Nancy. Share your observations.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I think have made a huge impact. And one is after last year's sabbatical, when we came back, one of the things that we started doing was starting every Monday morning with a nature walk. And so it's like, that is part of our work day now. That's part of our work week. And I think that is really beautiful. And then in terms of like responsive time off, there was one specific time over the summer where like things were just not going very well. There was like, a lot of stress, felt like a lot of things were kind of in turmoil. And we met on Zoom or on the phone or something like that. And you were like, I'm kind of sensing a little bit of frustration. And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of frustration. You're like, me too. And it was like, everything is just like, feels really tense right now or whatever it was. And you were like, well, let's look at the calendar. Like, what would happen if we just took the next 2 weeks off? Is there anything on the calendar that can be rescheduled or that, we need to do over the next couple of weeks? And once we took a look at things, we were like, actually, like, we didn't have client meetings and stuff like that. So we took 2 weeks off in response to that. And I think that also kind of circles back to being in service to ourselves, like allowing ourselves to be like full human beings in this business. Like when things are not working and we're not feeling good, like we can allow ourselves to step away for a minute.
Yeah.
And everything was fine.
Right.
Like it was fine. We came back after a couple of weeks feeling better, and like the business was still here, and our clients were still here. And yeah.
And I think it was really convenient that there weren't that many things that had to be rescheduled. Like there were a lot of plans that had to change, right? Like the plans that we had for the summer season, many of the plans or the goals that we had for the summer had to be kicked into the fall. So we had to do a lot of adjusting of our sort of strategic plan, if you will. And then we had to do some rescheduling of like meetings and whatnot, but not a ton. And I'm really grateful for that because it would have been harder to do that. Mentally, it would have been harder to give ourselves permission to take that break if we would have had to, I'm using air quotes here, inconvenience a lot of clients by having to reschedule. But what I learned from that experience is that when inevitably that happens again, we will absolutely reschedule whatever we need to reschedule. We will inconvenience whoever we need to inconvenience because it really was such a powerful learning moment. Like, oh, this is what it looks like for the business to be in service to ourselves, right? Like, this is what it looks like. And this would have been the right thing to do, even if we would have had a ton of client appointments on the calendar, because that's what we needed. Like, my personal life was totally in shambles. Your personal life was, you were having your own shambles. And then there was just like, we were struggling. Like, we were both in a major moment of struggle. And like, the kindest, most compassionate thing that we could do was just tend to ourselves. And we did. And it was a big deal. And I had honestly forgotten about it until we were planning the outline for this episode. And you were like, well, we should talk about the time off we took this summer. And I was like, what time off are you talking about? Like, I'd already forgotten about it. And then you started talking about it, and I was like, oh shit, that was so important. And isn't it wild that I've already released it from my mind? Like, no, we need, this is why annual reviews are so important. We needed to come back and talk about that again with distance, with perspective. And it feels really powerful for us to be saying to each other, okay, and when that happens next year and there are 24 client appointments on the books, we still cancel them. Period. Because that was the thing that needed to happen. And not doing that is denying like a core part of our human experience. It's not doing that is really, it's treating your body like a machine. And we don't want to do that. So sacrifices have to be made. It feels like such a crucial lesson. Thank you. Thank you for reflecting on that.
Yeah, of course.
So zooming out, that's everything that happened this year. It was a lot. It was a lot. We were really loosening our grip on needing to have a plan, on needing to know what was going to happen when. We were really intentionally trying not to schedule or plan further out than the current season that we were in, which can be challenging. And we just wanted to see what happens. What happens when we loosen our grip on control and allow ourselves to be more synced with natural cycles and to really to be operating from a deeper place within ourselves. What happens? And I want to say just a couple of things about how liberating it's been, but also how terrifying it's been. So tell me a little bit about emotionally, how has this year of being in the liminal space felt for you?
I mean, it's felt very disorienting, and, it definitely hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, but at the same time, like you were saying, like there are times where it has felt so liberating. And I think that we've kind of been riding these waves, at least for me anyway, of like riding these waves of like feeling really disoriented and like, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing today. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then just like trusting that it's still okay. And then like things will develop and it's like, oh gosh, that was so good. And like felt really aligned and right and like right on with our purpose. And then we'll kind of go back into that wave of like, oh gosh, where are we going? What's happening? What's going on? And then it's like, oh, well, this thing clicked into place. And I think it's felt kind of like a series of small things clicking into place. all year, and it's like one thing after another. And in between those things clicking into place, it's sometimes been a little tumultuous, just like being and feeling that disorientation. And then sometimes it's felt really like there's been a lot of ease too. It's kind of like there's like been a balance of both things throughout the year. But I think just kind of reflecting back on all of it, all of that disorientation and kind of like the apprehension or the fear of like, are we going to be able to sustain? And looking back on it all, like, I think it was all necessary. Like, we had to travel through all of it. Not that we've arrived anywhere, because we're still like on this journey that's kind of going to keep going. But it all feels really good in the way of like, it was scary and we did it anyway. And that feels really liberating and just feels really aligned. I feel like the more that we come into alignment with our values, the better everything feels, and the easier the disorientation or those tumultuous moments, the easier they are to navigate, because we're led by values instead of like, well, we have to produce and make money and,
Right.
So.
I really appreciate you saying all of that. I feel it. I second everything you're saying, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'll just say that everything you're describing, like, is the process of deconditioning from an oppressive system. I think it's worth coming back to that over and over again, that you don't get to opt out of capitalism or patriarchy or white supremacy without a lot of discomfort. Yeah. And the reason so many people stay in the systems is because there is comfort there, right? There's familiarity. There's a predictability. We know what life looks like inside of those systems, even if we think the systems are wrong, right? It's why so many like white people, for example, really don't want to explore anti-racism. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. It forces you to look at things and feel things that maybe you don't want to look at or feel. But if you have the call to do it, and if you've listened to this much of the podcast conversation so far, like, I have a feeling you do feel the call to remove yourself from those systems. I guess like what we're learning is that it is possible, and it's uncomfortable, but it's workably uncomfortable, right? The disorientation isn't so dramatic that you wake up in the morning and you're in a panic. Right? No, it's just like, it's like when you get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and you don't want to turn the lights on. Maybe you're in a new place. You're in a hotel. Okay, let's play with this. This image. You're in a hotel. Lights are off. You got to go to the bathroom, but like you don't have the muscle memory of exactly where the bathroom is. So you've got to put your hands on the wall and like very slowly make your way to the bathroom. And maybe you stub your toe along the way, and that sucks. But like, you're going to survive, and you're going to pee, and you're going to go back to bed. It's going to be okay. That's what this year felt like. Okay. Deconditioning from capitalism. Hard, but worthwhile.
Yes.
Let's talk about the retreat. The Deep Rest Retreat. Because I think we both really feel like the Deep Rest Retreat was the moment this year when the stars aligned. More so than they had before. It was like the moment when it was like, this is it. And again, not like it forever and always. We just like cracked the code to the universe. But like for where we are in the season of development, like everything came together and we could see with clarity where it is we're headed. Tell me a little bit about your experience of that.
Man, the retreat was so good. I think, well, it felt like almost like a proving ground for us, because it was like we have these ideas and we know what we want the outcomes to be, but I don't think we had a super clear picture of like what the path to get there really looked like until it actually came into existence. And, we had a fantastic group of folks that came on this retreat, and it was just really powerful to see. I feel like the biggest difference for me was seeing people come on this retreat, and it's like, yes, it's a retreat for your business, but there was like nary a laptop to be found. Nobody looked at email. I mean, I can't speak for what people did in the privacy of their own room, but right? Email wasn't a thing. Like we were just like all of that, like the actual workings of your business are put away. And like what we are here to like be in service of is like tending to the business owner so that they can, be refreshed or be tended to within their own business. And it was just really incredible to see people come into that experience with like some intentions and then just see how things unfolded over the weekend, how their intentions shifted, how things were opening up for people. And it was just so beautiful to be able to do that or to witness that and be in community at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the most beautiful things that I felt I came away with from that retreat was that, yes, we were there as facilitators, but like we were in a circle. Like there was no hierarchy within.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, Maegan is here as our great leader who is here to bestow her wisdom upon us. It was like, no, like we are each bringing something so valuable to this experience. And it was just really beautiful to kind of witness that and like feel like the alchemy in the air. And yeah, it just felt like really like values led. And, we didn't talk about business strategy or any of that. And it was really, really great. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's great. We need to grab the transcript of that for the future sales page. That was so good. Yeah, I feel like it really solidified that we are not here to coach people on business strategy. And like strategy is important and structure is important, but
sure.
like that's not what we're here to do. And it's been so hard for me to release that because I have so many years and tens of thousands of dollars of coaching that I've paid for where the message has all been, people will only pay you if you can help them make more money. You have to help people see how to do it, how to build the business. And it's a huge deconditioning for me to just let that go and to be like, no, I don't have to do that because there's another avenue to success in business that is channeled through the personal. And it doesn't involve coaching, right? It doesn't involve one person knowing something that another person doesn't know. As a company, we want to move away from that. We don't want to create any offerings that revolve around me or you as an expert, right? Okay, pay me and I'll teach you this thing that you can't know unless you pay me to tell you how to do it. No, absolutely not. Like what we're coming back to is what we both believe is true, that we all have all of the answers inside of ourselves. And the work is remembering, if you will, remembering how to come back to the part of us that knows what the right decision is for me every step of the way. So that felt really solidified on retreat. We're not doing skills and strategy coaching, right? We really are here to serve as guides, as mentors for business owners who want to bring more soul into their business, right? They want to really allow themselves to be healed as they do the hard work of growing their business and being of service to other people. We could see through the retreat how much we want to weave more ritual into the work that we do, more ceremony into the work that we do, more community building. That's so huge, the community aspect. And just rewinding for a second to what you were saying about the disorientation. Like one of my observations from this year is that I could never have done what we did this year alone. Because there were so many moments when like I was in doubt or I was in fear or I was in fatigue and you weren't. And I got to like feed off of your strength. And then reverse that, right? Moments when like you were really stressed or really in a lot of trepidation and like I was feeling really clear and confident. That combined with the magic that happened on that retreat really solidified that community has to be a part of what we're creating, but it also just has to be a part of your life if you want to do this type of work as a business owner. You cannot do it alone. You have to be in community. So that felt so important.
Yeah.
Really very exciting. Yeah. And we talked earlier about the other thing we learned this year is to let it be slow. Right? To like trust the speed of things, trust the pacing of things. Don't try to rush. That balance of like having trust in the process And also, being smart about it too, knowing your finances, understanding what we could afford, what we couldn't afford. Like finding that balance has been a big learning curve this year. I want to talk, just for the sake of full transparency, about a couple of the things we wish we would have done differently this year. There's not much, because I do think a huge part of what happened this year was like chaos. We needed to let the chaos reign.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change many things about that. But there are two things in hindsight I wish I would have given a little bit more attention to. And the first is audience growth. I really didn't put any focus this year into growing the the newsletter list. We have this podcast. It's still really fresh, obviously, but like we haven't done anything specifically besides share it with our newsletter community to like grow the podcast list. And like having that audience is so crucial to the financial success of a business. And we want to spread this conversation as far and wide with as many business owners as we possibly can. And we didn't really take any actions this year to support the business and growing that audience. So if I could go back in time, I would probably say like, hey, give that a little bit of TLC. It's okay that we didn't. It will be a major focus in 2025. And I'm trusting that it will all be fine. So we don't need to be freaked out about it. But also, if you love this podcast, please do share it with a couple of your business owner friends. That would be wonderful. So that's something that I wish would have been a little bit different. And the other thing is about money. This was a very light financial year. On paper, the business is losing money this year. Luckily, my husband and I have another business that we were able to move funds from that business into this business to keep us afloat. And that was a big reason why we were able to sell so few things this year. So I'm really grateful that we had that cushion to be able to just fully surrender into what we did this year. But we can't do that again next year. So next year, we need to do more selling. And I think we could have done a little more selling this year than we did. I think we could have put like a little more focused intention into, kind of selling our one-on-ones to a few more people, right? Or we could have had like a longer runway to launch the retreat. So there are some things we could have done to increase our sales this year. I just think moving into next year, we'll need to be more focused on what we're selling and making sure that, we're bumping revenue up again.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts, my reflections on what could have been a little bit different. Do you have any follow-ups?
Not necessarily about what could have been different, but I do feel like I would like to say for anyone who's listening, who's like, well, that's really great that you had that cushion and that you could just like burn it all down to like rebuild it from scratch, like good for you. This sort of shift doesn't have to be a burn it all down and start from scratch kind of shift. There are so many small things that we've done over this year that could be implemented into an existing way that you're working to just start taking those baby steps in kind of like just really letting go of some of the, more toxic practices that kind of come up. So I just wanted to say that just because it's
Thank you.
I know not everybody is in a position where they can do something like this, but not everybody needs to. So
No. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And we're going to be talking a lot more about this in 2025, like financial realities, because we want this podcast and the work that we do to be more rooted in the spiritual, in the introspective than in the strategic and the pragmatic. But we don't want to become just, another pair of white ladies who are like telling people just to like manifest your destiny, just to like manifest all the money. That's like, no, that's not in alignment with what we believe. Like it's balance, and we have to be able to talk about all sides of it. And we want to have more conversations. This was one of Jonathan's manifestor moments when we were having our group planning session for this conversation. He went on this whole tangent. He was like, I think we should do a whole series of conversation talking to people who have made big changes and how they did that financially. And I was like, manifestor moment noted. But let's come back to focusing on the outline for this conversation. So I really hope we can talk a lot more about that. And everything that we do, all of the offerings that we do in this business this year and moving forward will be rooted in the small changes. It's what we've witnessed with our community, our deeply rested community this year. It's like being in community with each other as we intentionally work together to make small micro shifts in the way we're approaching ourselves and the way we're approaching our businesses, and then watching the ripple effect, the magic, the alchemy that begins to happen when we are committed to showing up in slightly different ways, right? But not so drastically that it shakes the foundation of your financial security. You should never make a change in your business that jeopardizes your financial security. All it's going to do is send you into fight or flight. And you can't do work. You can't be of service if you're in fight or flight. So we need to know that there's financial security. So we're going to be talking so much more about all of this next year. I'm really, really excited for it. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I think that covers it.
And I think the Deep Rest Retreat was it was our favorite thing that we did all year, hands down. So magical. And it was like seeing in practice what happens when, those people didn't turn their businesses upside down. They just came to a 5-day retreat, which is revolutionary in itself to say, I'm paying for this. I'm making the time for this. I'm traveling to go to this space, to this land, to do this deconditioning work, this coming back to myself as a business owner. And wow, it was just so powerful to witness how much we can change within ourselves, within our businesses, without actually doing anything crazy dramatic. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a tangent. I'm just the kind of person who likes to turn things upside down. So This was a me choice. This was a Maegan choice, not a everybody needs to do this choice. Okay. All right. We said we were going to keep this under an hour. We failed, but we're almost done. If you're still listening, hang in there. We got some good nuggets for you here as we come to the end. It's been a wild year. It's been such an important year. We feel so clear about why we're here now. We have some ideas about where we're headed, which we're going to speak to in a minute, but we have a long way to go. And we're celebrating that. We're celebrating that this is just the beginning of a really long journey. As we reflect on where we are here at the end of 2024, Nancy, I would love it if you could read the mission statement. We've been working on our goddamn mission statement for years, and it never felt right. Like, it just never felt right or true. After the retreat, after the election, planning for this conversation, like, it all started to come together, and we said, you know what? It's time for us to go big, to go bold, and to be completely unapologetic about what actually matters to us. And we've landed on a mission statement that, for now at least, feels really good. So, without further ado, Nancy, can you please read it to the people?
Sure thing. We help small business owners heal the personal and collective wounds of capitalism by fostering a sustainable approach to service rooted in deep rest, self-trust, and community care. Our content and offerings are designed to help entrepreneurs restore their sense of well-being while creating resilient, purpose-driven businesses that prioritize people over profits. Together, we're cultivating an anti-capitalist vision of success, one that values collaboration, interdependence, and prosperity for all.
Phew, full body chills. I love it.
It's good.
I mean, I'm sure it'll change 1,000 times, but it's good.
Just for the record, this document originated December 2023.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. We've been working in this document
for
specifically for a year. So that's what we're doing. That's where we're headed. And it's December 4th when we're recording this episode. We are leaving for our winter sabbatical on December 20th. We'll be on sabbatical December 20th through January. We'll be back in February. So we've been talking about, like, how do we want to use the last few weeks of this year? And what we've landed on is that we're really focusing the next few weeks on planting seeds for the offering that we want to bring to life in 2025, which is all about building community with business owners who want to embody some of these anti-capitalist values. And we're thinking about doing that through creating a community that is centered around seasonal business planning. So it's going to do a lot of things, I'm sure, but the core of it is, like, how do we really bring together the philosophical with the pragmatic, because the pragmatic is so important. We need structure in order to move our businesses forward. And we want that structure to align with the natural seasons of the earth and not with the arbitrary seasons of capitalism. So we're feeling really excited about creating a community that basically helps people walk through all of this that we've been doing for years and years, but in a way that doesn't require a complete like burn it all to the ground and lose money for a year. And like, no, that's like doesn't need to be the path. We want to help create a container where people can really do this work with ease and joy and love and friendship and community with others. That's the idea. Like, that's it. That's where we are with it. And we want to use winter sabbatical to let this idea work its magic in our subconscious. Can you talk, Nancy, about the seeds tuber metaphor that we're working with?
Yeah. When we originally were talking about this and we were talking about like, we have these ideas and then we're taking this sabbatical, and what immediately came to mind were ranunculus flowers. I don't know if you,
it's my favorite
they're
flower,
so beautiful.
Nancy.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't even know that.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Oh.
But that's the flower that specifically came to mind, because for a ranunculus to grow and bloom and make the beautiful flowers, it has to experience the chill of winter in the ground. It has to, technically, maybe it has to freeze, but so many plants like need that overwintering in order to gather energy. You know, that's when it's like gathering all the energy from the soil and putting it into the bulbs that are in the ground so that the plant can spring forth in the springtime. And so that's just kind of how I envision like planting these seeds right now and then letting them winter, letting them sit in the ground in winter and gather that energy until we are ready to bring them forward next year. So yeah. Nature's a process.
Nature's process. So we're going to do a lot of visioning over the next few weeks. We're going to make some vision boards, and we're going to plant seeds for this offering. We know we want it to be community-based. We know we want it to be very affordable so that we can get as many business owners into this work, into this community as possible. And once we step away for sabbatical, we are done thinking about it. For us, that's a really important part of sabbatical, that when you log off, you are really giving yourself full permission to not think about work at all, but to trust that all of the work that needs to happen, it's happening below the surface. And yeah, we have so much more to say about sabbatical, but not today because this conversation has gotten quite long. But that's what's happening. That's where we're wrapping things up. And our plan when we come back from sabbatical is to record a follow-up conversation to share more about sabbatical as a concept, as a project, and to share what happened for us on sabbatical and where we are with this idea that we just kind of laid out for you all right now. And I'll just say for full transparency that when we were outlining this conversation, I had this whole internal dialogue about whether or not to share the seeds of the idea. And then I was like, why am I debating that? And then I realized because there's still a part of me that thinks, oh, but what if I share it on this podcast episode and then somebody hears it and then they take the idea and they do it. And then we can't do it because they already did it. And I was just like, oh, there it is. You know, like there's the conditioning. There's that fearful part. There's that competitive part. You know, that way of thinking is still really ingrained in my nervous system. And it felt really good to notice that that happened. And then to very intentionally make the choice to say, no, I do want to say this out loud. I do want to share that these are the seeds because I want the folks listening to this podcast to be able to witness in real time what happens to the seeds of those ideas over sabbatical. Part of our mission is to help more business owners take sabbatical. It's like the most anti-capitalist thing you can do, and it's so healing and transformative. So we want to let you see really, truly what happens when we step away into this winter cocoon of deep rest. What happens with all of those seeds that we plant in the earth literally and metaphorically, while we're resting. Anything else, Nancy, that you want to say about where we are as a company here at the end of the year?
I mean, I'm just really proud of us. I think that's kind of the last thing that I have to say about that. I think that I'm really proud that through all riding those waves that we've really stuck with it, because I think where we've landed for right now and where we're going in the future wouldn't be possible otherwise. And I'm very excited about it. So
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad that we're doing what we're doing. And thanks for just being a great partner in this work. And yeah,
Thank
feels
you.
good.
It does feel good. And it's still terrifying, just so everyone knows.
Yes.
It's still terrifying. And I have to meet my doubt every day. Oh my gosh. Side story. Yesterday, I was watching a YouTube clip about the Notre Dame Cathedral in France being rebuilt. And they paid $1 billion, by the way. What? Okay, it's a different conversation. But the French president he was being interviewed by someone, and the interviewer said, when you made the claim that the Notre Dame Cathedral would be rebuilt in 5 years, like, did you ever doubt that that would be possible? And without missing a beat, he said, once you doubt, it's already over. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I've been working a lot with my doubt lately and learning about the shadow of my doubt. And I was like, once you doubt, it's already over. So doubt is something I really struggle with, self-doubt. And I'm really stepping into sabbatical with the intention to work on releasing my doubt and instead turning my dreams into reality. And just that line, once you doubt, it's already over. It's like, okay, I'm holding on to that.
Yeah.
I digress. We want to wrap up, dear listener. Thank you for sticking with us. We really hope that this review has planted some seeds in your mind and in your heart, that something that we said in this episode really resonated or catalyzed an idea or a question that you want to explore within your own process. So we want to share some reflection questions with you so that walking away from this conversation, you can really integrate what Nancy and I have talked about into your own process. Because one of our core values is to release comparison, right? And to really teach everyone we encounter that comparison, there's just no room for it here, right? We don't want you to compare our journey to your journey. We don't want you to listen to what happened inside of our business this year and then try to replicate that in your business. My process is not your process. We are all so uniquely different. And the rub, the struggle, the challenge, the burnout comes when we try to follow somebody else's roadmap, bottom line. So our intention in sharing all of this with you today is not to give you ideas about the kind of changes you need to make, but to expose you to a different type of conversation about being in business so that you can begin to discern what do you want to do differently, engage with differently, change, alter, transform inside of your own business. That's our intention. That's our wish for you. So some reflection questions to help you do that as we wrap up this conversation today. Are there any specific nuggets from this conversation that really resonated with you? Was there anything that either Nancy or I said that sent a little jolt of electricity through your body, right? Is there anything that just made your heart warm or made your mind, the gears of your mind start like really clicking and turning and rolling around? Write them down and then ask yourself, why? Right? Why did that particular part of the conversation really resonate for you? And what do you want to do with that information? And let this be a really deep reflective process. What resonated? Why did it resonate? Go deep with that question. Ask yourself why 5 times, right? Why did it resonate? Because it sounded interesting. Why did it sound interesting? Because I've never thought of it that way before. Why have you never thought of it that way before? Keep going. Keep asking why until you feel like, bam, you hit the bottom of the barrel. And then ask yourself, what do I want to do with this information? Another reflection question. As you're reflecting on 2024, can you get honest with yourself about what felt good and what didn't feel good? Right? Let your year in review be an uncomplicated process. Just look through everything that happened and check in with your body. Did it feel good or did it not feel good? And what do you want to do with that information? What does that information communicate to you? Final reflection question. What can you do to honor the season of winter? We're going to invite people next year to step into a sabbatical planning process with us so that hopefully many people can join our winter sabbatical next year. But chances are you can't take a sabbatical right now. But that doesn't mean you can't honor winter. So what does winter mean to you? How do you want winter to be reflected in the work you're doing in your business? What personal needs do you have that you can meet during the season of winter, darkness, cold? Ask yourself, write it down, honor it. Those are our reflection questions. We'll put those questions in the show notes. And if you listened all the way through, Nancy and I would love to hear from you. So send us an email. You can email me at Maegan@MeganMegginson.com. You can email Nancy at Nancy@MeganMegginson.com. And just let us know. I mean, we would love to know what this conversation meant to you, what stood out to you, what questions you have for us, things you would like for us to speak to in our follow-up episode. Whatever you want to share, we want to hear it. And Nancy, can you give us an update on what's happening with the podcast schedule?
Yes. So when this episode airs, this will be the last episode that comes out for 2024. And we will have 2 weeks off with the podcast, and we'll be back with our next episode on January 8th.
Man. Yeah, we'll be gone on sabbatical, but the podcast keeps on rolling because you can schedule all that in advance, which is amazing. So please do email us. We'd love to hear from you. You'll hear back from us in February when we're back from sabbatical. And just deep gratitude to everyone listening to this conversation, to any of our podcast episodes. We hope to see you in one of our circles and one of our communities in 2025. And for now, happy end of the year. Happy solstice.
Yeah.
Enjoy the holiday
solstice.
season. We'll talk to you in February.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.